Hi, welcome to Ketobiography. I'm one of your hosts, Robin Dobbins. At Ketobiography, Natalie Champ and I share inspiring stories of healing. We illuminate personal journeys that demonstrate the life-changing power of the ketogenic lifestyle, empowering our listeners with wisdom while building a thriving community. Natalie, tell us about our guest today.
Hi, Robin. Today's guest is a passionate advocate, coach, and educator in the low-carb community whose personal transformation has become a beacon of hope for others. After years of battling chronic health issues like lupus, prediabetes, eczema, and brain fog, she turned to a low-carb lifestyle and everything changed. Over the past 5 to 7 years, she's not only reversed insulin resistance and restored her health, but also made it her mission to educate and empower others facing similar struggles. She's one of the co-hosts of Hey Sister Girl YouTube show, a space candid, empowering conversations rooted in real life healing. This is more than a story of healing. It's a story of purpose, resilience, and leadership. Let's dive in to our friend, Denitra Davis. Welcome. We're so excited to have you.
Hey, so glad to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to share.
This is where we're going to turn it over to you to tell your story. But first, I'm just going to mention that you and I and Robin, we all met through Metabolic Revolution. And that's how we became part of the same community and got to know each other a little bit through that. And it's just been a joy. So I'm excited to hear your personal story and how you empower others.
Absolutely. So again, ladies, thank you. And what an amazing way to meet is through the Metabolic Revolution, which means that we are all looking for a community to to support others and support ourselves and normalize this way, right? So we don't look like we are the people with the problem. We want to be the people who are healing. So thank you for the opportunity. So my task is to share about me, which is sometimes a little daunting, but I have had an amazing journey to low carb and very thankful. It's interesting if I, started my early years as a child, I was actually diagnosed as epileptic. And I can remember, before going to elementary school and going to getting into my first elementary school where I had this diagnosis and was going to all of the doctor visits with my mom and, all of the probes and all of the things. So to learn that the ketogenic way of eating was actually developed for people with epilepsy was very resonating for me. And what it also taught me is that me learning that helped me understand that my journey to unwellness, if you will, started very early. My aunt always tells the story that I had my first seizure as a kiddo drinking a grape drink. I will never forget her telling me, she was like, you were drinking a grape drink. And then it came with some relational trauma with my parents at that time as well. But I always hang on to this grape drink now that I'm older and I'm reflective of my journey. I look at it and I'm like, okay, so this is the connection. It started early with the sugar, right? Having sugar in my life as a youngster. And so ultimately I was healed from epilepsy. I didn't deal with it beyond like kindergarten. My mother was very faith driven and just was not claiming any type of sickness for her daughter. And so I went through all those things. However, I also learned sugar at a young age. I tell people that I was a cakeaholic. It could be your birthday. It could be anybody's birthday. I was going to make sure you had a cake. It didn't matter. And it was going to be a sheet cake. And it was going to have 4 corners on it with the most icing in the corners. And the only agreement that we had is that I would get the 4 corners. It was just going to happen, right? I was the sugar girl. But I also remember as a child riding my bike to bakeries. So I learned it early. We had neighborhood bakeries that you could go to and get pinafores and little cupcakes for a quarter. So I tell these stories because when I'm working with my clients, I want them to always reflect all the way back to when they started to have this relationship with food that included sugar. And so when I think about my own life, everybody was going to have a birthday cake. We were not having birthdays. And even me, as I got older and started dating, for Valentine's Day, do not bring me candy, bring me a cake. And if you don't bring me a cake, I'll get my own cake, but I'm going to have a cake on Valentine's Day. I don't want the traditional chocolate. So these things developed me into a sugar person. I became a teacher at some point in my career. And my students also knew that at the time I was Miss Payne, I wasn't married yet. And my students knew Miss Payne got the cake. I don't want your mama to make a cake. I don't want you to bring a cupcake. They knew on the list that Miss Payne has the cake. Because at some point we came up with whipped icing for cake. I called it fake cake. Miss Payne doesn't do fake cakes. So I was always in charge of the cake. But I will say, I think some of the transitions for me in my low carb journey was that you mentioned in your introduction of me that I suffered with some chronic illnesses. At the time, I didn't even know that they were chronic illnesses or what they stemmed from. I thought that it was just life happening. You're getting older. And, they stem from things like, plantar fasciitis was some of the first signs of things that I had going on with my feet. And then it was eczema. So these were outwardly things that I could see were issues. For the most part, I would say to myself that I was fairly healthy. I'd never, been in the hospital, been to the doctor. I had no diagnosis. And so I was well. But I started to what I call now swelling up, right? I was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And again, thinking that thing was tied to aging. I discovered restaurants, right? I discovered that I could go to a restaurant because as I was growing up, we ate at home. So learning that I could go out to eat, and the thing with the birthday cakes, learning that you can have a birthday cake without a birthday was the second thing that messed me up, is that I could just go to a grocery store and order a cake, or I could go to a restaurant and have dessert. So now these things no longer were just treats or holiday, right? So for me at a restaurant, discovering other desserts, whether it was peach cobbler, whether it was, cheesecake. Like I had never heard of cheesecake before. What in the world is cheese and cake doing together? Like it didn't make sense to me. So I developed all of these things that were all surrounding food. If I did celebrations with my students at school, it was food. If it was my son's birthday, it was food. So these celebrations started to not become treats. They started to be ultimately my defeat. So one of the first things that happened with me was finally breaking down and going to the doctor about the plantar fasciitis and understanding that it wasn't the shoes I was wearing, it wasn't the ground that I was walking on, that there was something greater happening at that time. That was an initial wake-up call for me, although at that time, it was not related to me eating sugar. That's what I was told. It was how I was walking. It was a bone spur. These are the things you could do to it. But at no time was I told, like, you should change what you're eating. And then further, I had a family member with my prediabetes. I thought that prediabetes meant that I was safe. I was in a safe zone. I was just going to watch it. I had no idea of what I could possibly do to reverse it. I was just told to watch it, and that I wasn't diabetic, I was pre-diabetic. Now, what I say to my clients and anywhere I speak is don't let the pre fool you. Like the pre does not mean that you're in some type of safe zone, right? It's really, now I know, it took me 10 years to get that diagnosis of these high blood sugars. The other thing that happened with me was I was diagnosed with high cholesterol. You know, I learned that LDL was a bad cholesterol. So I went on this whole tangent around eating what was supposed to be a heart healthy diet, big salads, honey nut Cheerios, almond milk. I was so fancy that at my house, when I knew that I could have nuts, I was so fancy that I didn't want mixed nuts. I had like 5 jars, one for cashews, one for pistachios, walnuts, almonds, and I would make them mixed as I wanted them because I'm doing something healthy that I agree with, right? So I'm able to be fancy with this. So some days I would want cashews and pecans. Some days I would want pistachios and walnuts, right? Because I was so excited that I was doing something healthy for my body. Ultimately, I became vegan and vegetarian. I started with vegetarian. I didn't want meat. I watched the famous, and I won't even call the documentary because I don't want to give it any play. But many of you know that there's a documentary that makes everybody say, don't eat meat. So I watched that one too, and I stopped eating meat. And what I realized is that I got bigger and bigger. And I ultimately was vegan. I was like, okay, I'm not doing the vegetarian right. I got to go deeper. So then I became a vegan and I took all animal-based stuff out of my diet. And what I noticed is that I got bigger and bigger, right? I started suffering from gout because the doctor, when I first learned about gout, they were like, don't eat red meat. Don't eat lobster. Don't eat shrimp. These were like my favorite things. I mean, my dad and I have a all-you-can-eat crab date, right? Crab legs. And I stopped eating those, but I still were having these gout flare-ups. So, of course, medications, allopurinol is what they put me on, and I still wasn't getting better. So I'm naming these progressive type of illnesses that just kept happening, and all the things that I was told to do, they only got worse. So the prediabetes, now I have prediabetes, I'm suffering gout, I got plantar fasciitis. I'm doing a heart healthy diet, and I consider myself a clean heart healthy diet person because I gave up cake. I stopped eating ice cream. I stopped eating cookies. Like, why am I still not well? And then ultimately, this turned into a autoimmune issue, is what the doctor said. And I was diagnosed with lupus. And I wasn't buying the lupus initially. I was like, yeah, right. I'm going to go to another rheumatologist. And the other rheumatologist diagnosed connective tissue disease, right? She was like, well, I don't want to give you a diagnosis that's going to, be a part of your health profile. So I'm going to call it connective tissue disease while telling me it is lupus, but I'm going to call it this. So now I'm going crazy in my mind, right? I'm going in this deep dive of trying to study, like, what in the world is lupus? How did I get it? Why do I have it? And then I started to learn in the African-American community is that many Black women have been diagnosed with lupus. It was the disorder that they said, we don't know why you get it. What we understand is that it's your body fighting against itself. And so I'm like, okay, why is my body having to fight against itself? What triggers it? What makes it happen? And of course, they both prescribed me what was then, I think it's Plaquenil is the brand name for this drug. One of them gave me a double dose than the other one. None of them did I take. I was like, yeah, this ain't happening. At the time, I also was having some degenerative issues where I had a rotator tear, joint issues in my knees, my fingers. I'm breaking down. And at this time, I was like 40, 45. Like, I'm still young. Like, what the world is happening? And so I was fortunate. Well, let me tell this unfortunate piece first. I have a family member who also had very similar diagnoses and ultimately succumbed to them. That was a huge wake-up call for me. And as a matter of fact, I didn't get the lupus diagnosis until after this person was passed away. And so when I learned that I was having the same things that I feel caused her death, that was really a wake-up call for me, right? I've had these little, what I call breaks and these understandings about needing to do something different. And I finally knew then that I had to do something different, because I want to live, I want to be here. And so this is how I moved into this space of low carb. When diagnosed with lupus, I started learning more about nightshade vegetables, right? I was a big potato eater, sweet potato eater. I had changed from eating white rice to eating brown rice. I had gone from eating white bread to eating brown bread, because these things were supposed to be better for me. And so I wasn't getting better. And so I met a lady who started talking to me about her daughter being diagnosed with an autoimmune issue, and how she started to take out all vegetables and all plants. And I'm like, what? She was like, yes, these things are, and at the time we didn't have AI, we barely had Google. So this was like library, trying to figure it out, trying to find it out. But what I ultimately realized is that those things caused flare-ups for me in some way or another. I would have eczema breakouts. And from that time, it made me realize that I learned about carbohydrates, if you will, right? That these things are all considered a carbohydrate. And because they are carbohydrates, they're sugar. And so what I ultimately learned is that I had a sugar problem, that sugar was tearing me up. We have a common statement in the Black community where we say Black don't crack. Well, for me, sugar was cracking me. It was tearing my tail up. And so I began to take out some of the vegetables. I had already gotten rid of the sweets. I knew just from a child that the sugar is just bad. But what I could not really relate together was that these vegetables and these fruits and these processed foods that I was told to bring my cholesterol down, that these things were still sugar. So I was a Honey Nut Cheerio girl. I would go to Sam's Club and buy 2 of the 2 boxes, right? Because I didn't want to be without it. I ate them with almond milk. And then I also used them as a snack, because I got a green light to eat this. So I'm going to eat it all I want. But again, I wasn't getting better. So a little forward was for me, once I started to take out some of the vegetables, take out the processed foods, I was starting to see a turnaround. On vegan and vegetarian, I lost a lot of weight. Like, I was what I would say I was fine, but I was still sick. I lost a lot of weight. What I know now is that I lost a lot of muscle mass. And so again, I regained all the weight. And so I am your yo-yo dieter, that I have before pictures, after the before. It's like, which one do you want, right? My closet was broken down into the small clothes and the big clothes, so that I could say, hey, if ever I go back up, I could go and get these clothes, right? So ultimately, getting into the low carb space was a game changer for me. And because of that, I was able to really turn my health around. My diagnosis has started to improve. And so I knew that I was on to something. I was losing weight. My skin was clearing up. My pre-diabetes was improving. All of these things were getting better the less sugar I ate. And so at one time I was doing keto. And for me, keto means lowering your carbohydrate intake. But even on keto, some things that are allowed in the ketogenic space, like nuts and certain vegetables, even though they're low carb, I realized that those were still issues for me. And so then I started taking those things out. The ultimate thing that happened was I was getting better, but people around me weren't getting better. And I was sounding like a broken record, like, oh, here you go with another diet, right? Here you go with this. And so what I did was I took my own journey. It wasn't enough for me to be better. I needed to understand the science. My mother would say that I'm nosy. I know now that I'm curious. And so my curiosity led me to wanting to understand the science of the ketogenic, which, as I mentioned before, helped me understand that the keto diet started with helping epileptic patients, right, rewrite the cells in their brain. And so, of course, this was intriguing for me. And so now I've, become a Keto-Carnivore coach under Maria Emmerich. I've gone through the Society of Metabolic Health and became a metabolic health practitioner. That wasn't enough. Now I've gone to the Nutrition Network to become a Nutrition Network practitioner. And what all of that does for me is so that it's not just another talk. I want to be helping people from the basis of science. And so now I'm working with clients. I closed out a case with a client yesterday who, in 3 months doing carnivore, she lost 22 pounds. Just revolutionized her life, her family's life, and one thing I think is that we've just been so misinformed. My idea of these Honey Nut Cheerios somehow being healthy for me was not something that I created in my mind. It was something that literally was fed to me, right? And so one of the stories that Natalie and we were talking about before the show is, I am your person who will see you in the grocery store, and I feel so inclined to have a conversation with you, I will. So 2 stories I'll tell. One of them is a gentleman, literally his basket only had Honey Nut Cheerios and almond milk. And we were walking out at the same time, and I could not contain myself. So I said, hey, tell me, why the Honey Nut Cheerios? He's like, oh yeah, these are healthy for you. The doctor said I got high cholesterol, and that if I eat these Honey Nut Cheerios, it's gonna make my heart, make me better. And I'm like, okay. I said, have you ever read the back of the box? He's like, yeah, I know it ain't no sugar in it. I said, it's a box of sugar. He was like, it's not a box of sugar. This is not sugar. I know how sugar tastes, and this does not taste like sugar, and I don't add sugar to it. So I asked him, I said, hey, can I do a finger walk on the back with you and read the ingredients? And so what I call it is nutrition facts, right? And we have nutrition facts on the back. And what I say to people is, there's a lie somewhere. If they had to tell us on the back that these are the facts, there's a lie somewhere, right? And so we went to the back, and this gentleman, for the first time, and he had to be 74, for the first time, he was looking at the back of a box and seeing that the second ingredient was sugar. His mind was blown away, right? Forget the wheat that it starts with, right? So in all of the other junk that's in it, he was so shocked and disappointed in himself. Like, being a 74-year-old, he's like, oh man, I've been duped, is literally was his sentiment. He's like, what I'm gonna do with this? This guy's on a fixed income, right? What I'm gonna do with this? I've spent $14 on this stuff. I walked him back into Sam's, and we returned it, and he got his money back. He had never done that either. He was like, I can get my money back on food. I was like, yes, you can. So I'm just saying that to say, like, this misinformation that's out there, that, anytime you can say that, Honey Nut Cheerios is better for you than eggs and bacon, we have a problem, right? Another instance was a gentleman literally had his cane. He was in one of the rolling carts. He had a cane like laying across it, but in his basket, how we stopped each other was we were at the heavy cream place in the store. I was buying heavy cream to make ice cream. And I asked him, because I need conversation starters to get in folks' business. I asked him, I said, hey, so what do you use your heavy cream for? He's like, oh, I use it to, make my potatoes fluffier. Of course, I was like having a heart attack at that moment. But literally, I asked his permission to, ask him about, what's going on with his health. I see you're, riding in the car, you have a cane. And of course, he told me he was diabetic. He had some heart issues that he was dealing with. And his understanding was making some of these tweaks were going to help him get better. And so I told him, I was like, hey, I help people reverse their chronic illnesses with just giving them knowledge. I said, I don't have anything to sell you. I'm not going to run in my car and get the next gadget or cure thing. I just want to talk to you about what you do have in your basket. I said, if you give me permission, I want to just separate, draw a line in your basket about what's happening in your basket that is either going to help you improve those illnesses or continue to make it worse. And so he and I've separated some of the things. I mean, he had shredded cheese in his basket. You know, he had the syrupy blueberries. He had the, you know, what he thought was 100% grape juice, you know, wheat bread, brown rice. These things he felt were going to make him better because someone had told him that those were healthier choices. And so then I put on this side the meats, which were very limited for him, not a lot of green vegetables. And he allowed me to help him take those things back and help him put some things in that would help improve his health. And it's those type of moments that are just awareness moments. So one of the things that I have adopted at this stage in my life is if I see something, I say something. Of course, I can't say something to everyone, but as I feel compelled or the conversation leads itself in that direction, I definitely am open to having a conversation, shedding light, and not just saying sugar is bad, because conceptually we all know that, but we have no idea how bad. We've yet to tie these issues to the sugar intake. And that's essentially what I endeavor to do. I teach a lot about insulin resistance with my clients, helping them understand what insulin resistance is and what those high sugar levels are doing to their body and how they can ultimately turn that around. That sugar is a toxin, it's a poison, it's not required for our body. And this is where I get in trouble with a lot of people, is when I say plant-based equals sugar-based. Even when you're being healthy with eating plants, those plants are going to metabolize into sugar. They're saccharide, and they are going to be a sugar. And so my journey, just trying to sum this up a little bit, is that I started as a kiddo with, you know, free will to eat whatever, unknowingly to my family members or anyone at this point of what sugar actually does to the body. I know now when I think back to the grape drink scenario with the epilepsy, what other sugar was I eating at that time that potentially caused me to be epileptic? I'm thankful for my mom, who was wise enough to start to make some changes so that I didn't live with that. But for myself, I say it transitioned right into this overconsumption of sugar, right? This lack of movement, being sedentary. And so for me, I'm on a mission. You know, our business, while I'm on the Hey Sister Girl show, our business is nutritional knowledge. We spell it KNEW, nutritional, because we believe if you knew better, would you, could you, should you do better? And ideally, there's this whole gap in knowledge of how to best eat to live optimally. And that's essentially what we do with our clients. We do it with events. It's just try to share with people that protein and fat are your essential nutrients. And what I mean by essential macronutrients is that you need those to live and thrive. And fat has been demonized. However, carbohydrates are non-essential. You could live longer and better without them. And so that's what we endeavor to do. So my husband and I, Sam, he's the co-founder with me of Nutritional Knowledge. We have two beautiful daughters. Sam has two daughters and my son. So we are working as a family to be better, and whomever we can help with that. My son is in the hospitality service business and living a carnivore lifestyle. You know, both the girls are, one of them is already a nurse, one is becoming a nurse. So, you know, around here, like, we are about how to live optimally and how to help others live optimally. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here and share my story. I love this Ketobiography. How clever is that? It's almost like the nutritional knowledge cleverness. That's because our brains are functioning now, right? So we can be clever. Okay. I appreciate you, ladies.
Oh, I love that story, Denitra, so much. Our story is a little bit aligned. Yours might have been Honey Nut Cheerios and mine was shredded mini wheats. I thought, well, it's fiber And it's also an enjoyable snack. So that is what I would eat, thinking I was doing myself a favor. Boy, did I just not know. And I couldn't figure out why I was so bloated all the time, you know? So when it comes, I'm going to go back a little bit to the beginning. When it comes to pre-diabetes, right? And you talked about don't be fooled by the pre. Don't you think it's super misleading to patients when they hear that diagnosis, if you will? It just means that you're not ready to be put on medication, but you are a diabetic, essentially, right? So how do you explain that to your clients that you're working with in a way that they're going to understand it? And then I guess maybe it's hard when you're debunking what the doctor says, right? Like, so how do you go about that to make it, you know, more, I guess, dumbed down for folks?
Absolutely. So the first thing is I'll say is I was an elementary school teacher. And so I have what I call skills to break it down and make it easy. So I really use a car analogy, right? I first take them to asking, do you even know what insulin resistance is? For me, when somebody asked me that I know what insulin was, I told them that insulin was what diabetics take. I had no idea that it was a hormone in my own body, right? So that's one of the things that I try to help people understand is that you have a mechanism in your body to manage sugar, and that the body can only manage 1 teaspoon of sugar at any given time. That's the eye opener for most people. And so how did I become pre-diabetic? I was eating more than a teaspoon of sugar for the last 10 years. In any form, whether it's an ultra processed food, whether it's a processed food, whether it's cake, cookies. And so I help people understand their day. Let's just talk about what you've been eating in this day. Now you tell me how much sugar you've had, right? We're going to count these carbs up. My uncle used to say, God rest his soul, don't be a dummy with a smartphone, is what my uncle used to say. Let's Google how many carbs are in here. Let's divide this out so you can see how many teaspoons of sugar was in that individual thing. Now you tell me, can your body manage more than a teaspoon of sugar? This is how you get the culminating diagnosis of prediabetes. And I agree with you, Natalie, that I love the way you said that, is that you're just not ready for meds. But I will say this, is that they are putting them on meds now. Many of my clients that have been diagnosed as pre-diabetic are starting on metformin, being told that you will do metformin for 90 days and come back and see me after 90 days. And let's see if we get that number down. Never talking to them about what they're eating, and never even giving them a glucose monitor, which I think is shameful, right? My client, this has been about 2 years ago, was pre-diabetic. And I asked her, I said, well, did the doctor give you a glucose monitor? No, she called and asked for a glucose monitor. The doctor said, you don't need a glucose monitor. Just take the metformin for 90 days and come back and see me in 90 days. Of course, because she had been to an event that we have, she's been around us here in our talks. She didn't do any of that. She took the sugar out, lowered the sugar, and she's not carnivore, but she understood how I could go to a restaurant rather than having the fried chicken salad. I could have a grilled chicken salad and it could be better for me. I could skip the roll. I could skip the sweet tea. I could have more protein. And so that's how I explain prediabetes. I want them to understand that you did not get here overnight. This doesn't, I tell them it's the difference between a D and an F in school, right? You just because you're in the pre-diabetic range doesn't mean you weren't very close to failing. And so you're very close to being diabetic, and these ranges are created. Let me say this last thing about that. Now that I have overlaid that with insulin resistance for people, what I want them to understand when I'm looking at their numbers as a metabolic health practitioner, the doctor is only looking at your A1C to determine if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic. I'm looking to see, are you insulin resistant? So I'm looking for a lower number, if you will. I'm looking for you to be in where 5.6, 5.7 is pre-diabetic. I'm looking for you to be below that because the insulin resistance has already set in. And so that's how I kind of break it down to them, is helping them understand what gas does for the body. And when you overfill it, it's going to take over the car and not be productive. It's the same thing when you overfill your body with sugar.
Right. That is very well said, boy. And it's funny if you think about it. How expensive is metformin? How expensive is a glucose monitor? One is not the same. And I'm afraid that if I were to go to the doctor a few years ago, because things have changed just from 2 to 3 years ago in the pre-diabetic space, like you just very eloquently explained, I had hypoglycemia pre-diabetic, which I think we know in this space, but maybe others don't, that I was diabetic. I was flat out diabetic. And right now, if I were had all of those symptoms, they would probably recommend a metformin for me because, gosh darn, don't get rid of that bread or, the rice. Let's just put you on some meds. I know that Robin, I know it's crazy.
I just had a moment. I was going to some ADA classes here where I live, and the things that they were telling these people who were looking for help. Of course, I could not say something in that space because I was there supposed to be learning. And I just was cringing at the things that they were saying that these people were allowed to eat. While these people are looking for help, like really just wanting to manage their medications versus telling them you can get off medications. You don't have to be on medication. So that just popped in my head when you were talking. So yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, Denitra, but just to say this, the story was absolutely amazing. And firstly, I love that your aunt made that connection when you were a kid. You were drinking grape drink and then it stuck with you. I mean, what a journey. This has been a lifelong journey. And so you come from so much experience. It's really amazing. So I wanted to ask you, in your coaching, do you specialize in anything in particular? And, so healing, anything in particular, or a wide range? And then also, are you specific to a diet or a lifestyle, or do you offer a range of different options for people?
Absolutely. Great question. So it's interesting you should say that. I often say that I am, my little tagline is ACE. It's Advocator, Coach, and Educator. ACE. My husband really does it well. He's like introducing the ACE. At some point in life, I'm going to be introduced as that on a regular basis. But I do advocating, coaching, and educating. But I really believe that I'm in a space now where I'm all about health and healing. At many times when I first got started in this, I would say health and wellness, but I've kind of moved from there because I know now with working with my clients that we can be healed from this. I'm no longer saying we reversed. You are healed. Your body is back to its optimal state. So for me, it's about health and healing. When you take out what is impairing your body is so resilient that it will heal. We were designed to be healed. So I primarily am teaching people that you can be healed. In terms of our philosophy or our approach, if you will, we do not subscribe to a particular diet. Now, it's hard for people to see that because we practice carnivore. Well, I say carnivore-ish for me, because I'm going to still eat onions. I like them. I'm not going to eat them every day, but I like them. And I make a mean ice cream and I use allulose in it. So, but I found that taking all of the sugar and the plant-based stuff was healing for me. But I work with clients on all angles of where they make their entry into working with us, right? So I'm not coming in saying everything you did is wrong and you need to switch to this. One of the first things I do with clients is have them to do me like a 3 to 5 day reflective journal of what they've been eating. And I have a system that I use where they're able to put those things in that system and see how many carbohydrates they've been eating. And some of them, even on their own health journey, I worked with a lady back in December who was a pescatarian, and she weighed 150 pounds. She didn't have a weight problem, but the doctor, when she wanted to lose 15 of those 150 pounds, the doctor wanted to put her on a weight loss drug. Yes, right? Never talking to her about what she was eating. When we looked at her carbohydrate intake, she was eating a veggie burger, a big salad, drinking a protein shake. And so for me, it is about them understanding exactly what the foods are doing to their body. This is what I say to people. What's happening in your body shouldn't be a mystery to you. And so what I try to do is take the mystery off, right? You should have direct insight. Even with my clients who are pre-diabetic, that their doctors wouldn't give them a glucose monitor. Some of them are buying their own glucose monitor. You need to know when you eat something, what that food is doing to you. So, Robin, we don't subscribe to a diet. I quote Dr. Berry around proper human diet sometimes. But I want people to understand, how did it make you feel when you ate that? I do not teach moderation in any extent. I am totally against this concept around eating moderation, because moderation for me was, instead of eating a dozen donuts, I just ate 6 today. That was moderating for me. So I don't teach moderation at all. So yeah, so we don't have a particular diet. We want people to self-identify, know your labs, know what's going on with your lab work. I tell people you should know your A1C like you know your phone number, like you know your social security number, and you should know what it means when it is that way. The other thing we do is help people to advocate. We want you to be able to advocate for yourself. I have clients, when I have them to consider labs that they should get, their doctor is like, who ordered these labs? And I'm helping them understand, you ordered these labs. You want to know what your CAC is if you're putting me on cholesterol medicine. So we help them self-advocate, and then we build community. Us meeting was our attempt of being a part of a community. The Hey Sister Girl group that I'm a part of, the show, it is community building. We have a community that we encourage people to be a part of as well. So that's our approach, Robin.
You led right into my next question. So fantastic job there. You're obviously a professional at having podcast interviews. So awesome. You have spoken a couple of times about events. And so I would like to know, what kind of events are you hosting? Where are you talking? So, and we didn't ask where you're based. So if you could tell us where people can go to some of these events, or if you have any plan, please share with us.
Absolutely. So I am in Tennessee. I am a Memphian, lived in Memphis my whole life. All my school and everything is in Memphis. I was a teacher there for several years. 6 years ago, I moved to Jackson, Tennessee, which is about an hour, 20 minutes from Memphis. Which is where I met Sam. We have a whole little story, but we met here in Jackson, got married, and I've been here for 6 years. So the events that we host are awareness community. Last summer, we did Wellness Wednesday. We were partnered with Builders and Backers, gave us a grant, and then I was able to secure a location. Interestingly enough, it was at a Floral Cakes bakery, but it was also an event space that the owner of that space partnered with us to do a Wellness Wednesday every Wednesday. So people could come, get their labs read, learn more. Again, Sam is also an educator, us just teaching people. So that's one type of event. We've done brunch and learn. What people should know if they come to our events is that it's a learning event. We are there as educators to teach, and we're looking for the crowd that just doesn't know, right? We love having people who already believe this way, and people who have worked with us, they continue to show up, they continue to bring more people. But like the metabolic revolution, for me, that day was like a preaching to the choir kind of event, right? We are all on this journey. We've made the turnaround, and I love the space. But for us, we're looking for the person who still thinks that the Honey Nut Cheerios are going to do them some good. So we're looking for that. We've done recently in March, we did a big event in Memphis. It was Well-Informed Women Win, and I Am Man, metabolically aware of nutrients. Dr. Berry, if anybody in your space knows Dr. Berry, Ken Berry has been so gracious. This is the second event that he's come to. Dr. Kiltz was in the place. Amanda Decker, who's in Dixon, right up the street from us. I call it up the street because she's in Middle Tennessee. I'm in West Tennessee. And in the Hey Sister Girl group, my co-host on the Hey Sister Girl group came. And so we are always putting on, so I do cooking classes here in Jackson. I'm planning one in Memphis really soon. Haven't got the date secured yet. But those are the types of things that we do as a business for nutritional knowledge, is that we are all about putting it out there. We work primarily with educators in the Jackson area where we live. A lot of the people that have come through any of our classes or workshops, they are educators, but we do children. I speak at events. I'm a speaker. I was just in Kalamazoo, Michigan, speaking. From that event, it was a women's conference. From that event, we have 7 people who are now trying carnivore for the first time. And we are in like a text message group. And one of the guys has been in a remote, what is it? I'm trying not to say wheelchair because it's not a scooter. And he put in the group that like after 4 days of eating no plant-based, no sugar, he lost 8 pounds, right? And so it's those kinds of things that we're after, just to, get this spotlight on, you can control this yourself, right? You've been misinformed, you've been miseducated. I know I'm not your doctor, and I'm not a doctor. I'm not a dietitian. I'm none of those things, but just try it for 7 days and see how much better you feel. And if after 7 days works for you, let's do 14 days, right? I just worked with a family who the mom, the first days, I could see some things with her son that she just could not even have the conversation. She's like, yeah, don't take me too fast. Don't take me too fast. Because she knew his sensitivities, right? But the more she learned for herself, she just could no longer do it. So this kid went from temper tantrums about Nutella and pizza rolls to singing a song about wanting more ground beef, right? Like, he's making ground beef, he's eating chaffles. So it is those simple changes. So in my practice, in our business, the idea is not to wipe out everything that you do. I call it ingredient switches. How do we say, okay, this was great what you were doing. Okay, you were having a burger. Can I get you to just take the bun off and get 2 extra patties? Let 2 of those patties be your bun, right? A bun is a utensil. Why would you eat it? It's just to keep the grease off your fingers. So it's those kind of things. And those are the kind of events or things that people will learn if they show up at events for us.
I absolutely love just this outreach that you've created and this network that you're creating. And I hope that it continues to grow. And I think I need to head to Tennessee sometime soon and go to one of your events, because it just sounds very empowering and educational and right up my alley. So
well, Robin, we'll come to your place and do these events. Like that is the ultimate goal, is to take this thing on the road. I'm planning right now an event in Virginia. We're having some early conversations, and then we've talked about something in Nashville. So we are not stuck to Tennessee. Really soon, I'm going to be speaking for Tracy McBeath, who's with the Nutrition Network. She's doing a global lived experiences. I'll send you all the information, where we're going to have a summit of people sharing their stories. And I'm going to be one of the speakers. So there's tons. I want to be everywhere, wherever I can get to. I spoke in Washington, D.C. soon. I went to a podcast there. So I'm not bound by Tennessee. I want whoever's listening, I'm speaking. Even if they're not listening, I'm still speaking.
Look, if you're
Denitra,
going to walk up to somebody and take something out of their carton and show them in the store, then you're going to be out there telling people what's happening. I love it. And I love that you have this focus on going outside of preaching to the choir. I've been in several different spaces where that's what we're talking about. Let's get out there and do that. And all we do is talk about our stories over and over and again. And then like, no, we already know our stories. Let's get out there and go do it. So I'm like super pumped up about what you're doing. And I'm thankful that you came on. And I do want to point out that you have talked about your business several times. If someone is watching this on YouTube, you can see that Denitra has a QR code on there. So I definitely want to make sure you follow her and just scan that code. But Denitra, can you also tell us where else people can find you?
Yes, so my YouTube channel is actually called Advocator, Coach, Educator. Again, I'm building this to be the ACE. When I saw the letters together, I was like, oh, wow, that says ACE. So I've been building on that. We have Nutritional Knowledge is our website, and it is spelled KNEWTRITIONAL, knowledge.com. We also have Instagram. It's ACE on Instagram as well, Advocator, Coach, Educator. And then I have a Facebook page that I welcome people to be a part of. I don't do anything on there that anyone can't see. I have no private stuff happening on there, and it's just my name, Denitra Davis. You can also look up Sam Davis, who is my husband and co-founder in this space. And watch the Hey Sister Girl show. We call it Hey Sister Girl, but we have an outreach on there as well to males. And so you can find us on, for me, it's Central Time, Monday, 6 o'clock Central Time live is our Hey Sister Girl show. And on the Hey Sister Girl show, we're doing the same thing. Robin and G are both carnivores, and we talk about carnivore, and we do want people to try carnivores, but we have people who are part of it that are not all in on carnivore. What I say is that all of us are attempting low carb, and low to no carb, and carbohydrate stands for sugar. So we're trying to be low sugar, no sugar is essentially how I break it down. So thank you, Robin, for asking that.
Yeah, Denitra, I love the way you're stepping out of your box to educate. I'm finishing up my yoga teacher training. It's coming real soon. And we just recently had like a class, if you will, on how to eat to be a perfect yogi, right? And it was grains and vegetables and mangoes and etc. And I'm just like, don't say anything. And then at the end, we went around and talked about how we ate. And I sort of gave a little synopsis on when I was a I tried the same way, very much like you. I tried the vegetarian. I'm in California. That's what we do here. We are vegetarians. We're vegans. And I just got sicker and bigger and sicker and bigger. And so I explained that to my little class. And then I let them know I basically now eat beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. I have other things, right? But I'm not, but those are the foods that truly I can feel in my body, mind, body, and soul. And isn't that what yoga is about? Right?
Yes.
So that is where I'm coming from. And their mouths.
I want to interject here, though, also that you do 3 days of yoga, and you're the only one that does the yoga 100% of the time, and everybody else with their healthy diets, that's in quotes, is sitting in child's pose trying to catch a breath. So tell me which one's working better.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's why they were, thank you, Robin, that was sweet. But that is why they were like, I want to know more about this, because I am the only one still doing push-ups. And the 22-year-old, God bless her, is like flat on the mat, just trying to catch her breath, and really just wants to take a nap. And so, and I'm not, this is nothing against
no judgment. I agree.
It's just an observation that you can't help but make once you feel this, if you will, euphoria of energy, that I also mentioned to them, and I explained, you cannot explain this euphoria, because personally, I've never felt it until I got here. So to try to explain it to someone who has no idea what that means, it's literally impossible. But if you want to know more, let me know. And several have reached out. So I'm, whether they take the journey or not, I'm so happy that I got the opportunity to share that part, because it's not something that's widely talked about, especially in the yoga community.
What I love about that, Natalie, is, and this is truly a thing, is you get to show up as authentically you and bring your whole self to it. So this is what I say to people about me and carnivore. And, I've heard people say, well, talking about meat all the time is, overwhelming to people. That's a turnoff to people. That's people. I'm not going to not be me for them not to, I don't know. That's not my problem, right? I get to come to this space as me, the same way they're coming to this space with their Chick-fil-A bag, and I'm coming with my meat plate. I get to be me, right? So somehow you think that I should not be me. So I just applaud you for that and continue to have the conversations. One of the things that I've noticed is when I spoke in Kalamazoo, I met a woman who she came up to me after my speaking and said, well, I can never do all that meat because I don't eat meat. I'm a vegetarian. Now I'm looking at her face. I tell people insulin resistance doesn't have a size. It does have a look. It doesn't have a size, but it does have a look. And I'm looking at her face while she's a fairly small woman. I'm looking at her face and seeing the insulin resistance in her face. So of course, I wanted to know what her A1C was. She could not, she was like, it's up there, but I'm working on it. It's up there, but I'm working on it. I said, well, I'm going to push you to say it out loud. Own what it is. The same way you owned what you are eating and how you eat. You came up to me, all right? Her A1C as a small framed woman that doesn't eat meat was a 10.
We're muted, so you can't hear our response, but holy cow. So I hope then you were able to engage in a little further discussion after that.
So I wanted to say that, Natalie, as a point to and again, you're not doing coaching or whatever, but just helping people kind of, what do the labs say? You can choose your diet all you want that you feel it works for you. But what do the labs say? I was in shock that she was a 10, but I did, continue to broach the conversation with her about, consider your day. And this is what I say. If you are a vegan and a vegetarian, you eat sugar all day. That's all you're eating. If you have removed meat from your diet, the only thing you're eating is sugar. And the question becomes, as Natalie and Robin both, how's that working for you?
Right. And my final, wrap up of that conversation was, I will always go with how my body feels now that I've learned that. I will, if a religion calls for me to eat a certain way, that's not the religion that I would feel comfortable in, because that is, it's not where I want to be in life. And I also say that there isn't one piece of cake, if you will, that tastes better than feeling the way I feel.
I'm going to push the thing here. Celebrate.
All
the
right.
Celebrate button just happened.
I was like, what are we pushing? Okay.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I love it. Yeah. So, oh my God, I feel like we should do a Hey Sister Girl Ketobiography get together and
mashup episode.
Yeah, and reach out to all of our communities and say, we've all come together to share out of the box,
Absolutely. I would actually bring that to Robin and G and see what they think about. We have people on the show all the time, so
love it.
We want to reach whomever we can with our show, and it sounds like you all are doing the same thing, and it's just amazing. It's it's kind of sad that we are, I don't get to be the jingle on the morning news, like some of the prescription drugs, right? Just imagine if we could be the jingle, the guy that did the beef, butter, bacon, and egg song, right? What if that was a morning show jingle? So we got to keep getting people engaged, involved, get us some backers who believe, and take it to a whole nother level. So yes, I appreciate being here with you guys.
Yeah, and that I love what you said. We're often preaching to people that already know about some of these things, and they just want to hear people's story because it makes them feel part of a community that they are a part of. And I do think it's important, which is why we do this show, which is why you all do your show, is because we do want to tap into those people who are like, I didn't know that. What? And then let them dive in and do their own research, because often that's how we have the aha moment, if you will, and to learn more and be your own advocate. Your doctor is not the boss of you. They're merely there to make suggestions. And half the time they really don't know your backstory. They don't know, they don't want to know why. They want to know, have you filled your prescription? Is my,
and they don't know nutrition. So in the metabolic health, the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, the doctors and the practitioners, the nutritionists, the dietitians that are part of that, they will say out loud that I did not have any nutrition classes. I mean, thus some of them being insulin resistant themselves, right? So the doctor is not trained in nutrition. They're trained in medicine, how to Google, how to look at your symptoms and simply tell you, we say a pill for every ill. That's what they are going to do. And this is not, again, bashing doctors. It's just the reality. I personally have an amazing doctor who I met in a low carb space. I was in Dr. Eric Westman's first Keto Made Simple class. My doctor, Yvonne Moore, who happens to live in Memphis, was also a part of the class. She was there learning for herself and her patients. She's a gynecologist, and I made her my gynecologist. But that's where I met her, was in the Keto Made Simple with Dr. Eric Westman. So there are doctors. You got Dr. Tony Hampton, who is working extremely hard to try to turn it around in the Chicago area. He shows up in all of these different places. So there are people, and in the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners actually has a website that you can go to if you're looking for someone in your area. Their telehealth, Amanda Decker, who is in Dixon, Tennessee, has a telehealth medical now that people can subscribe to. And I don't know if Jody Nisha, who is in Hawaii, at one time I was under her as my doctor. So there are avenues. We just have to get super creative to self-identify, advocate for ourselves, and dig deeper to find people like us and people like these doctors who are about healing, not just wellness.
That's right. And if you listen to some of the, I would call them OGs of the space, the Sean Bakers, the Anthony Chaffees, the Ken Berries, they started out going, wait a minute, something doesn't feel right. They also had to learn for themselves. They had to feel their body. They're like, this isn't working. And which I'm very thankful that led them to, now they are nutritionally, they educate folks in nutrition rather than here's a pill. Like, let's start with why.
Right.
It's just kind of that's like life. Why? What is it that you're doing? Why are you doing this? Why are you here? Kind of a thing. So I love this conversation. I'm very inspired by all of the outreach that you're doing. It's almost exhausting, but also I want to know more. And I hope that you can share some information with Robin and I, because I would love to take it to some local churches around my area, the yoga community. I would love to have a talk about it anywhere. I would just love to hear more and how we can learn to do that. So with that being said, we ask a question to all of our guests, and it won't be hard, not for you. What key insight would you want to share that would help others with their keto biography?
Absolutely. Before I do that, I want to give a plug to Jackie Hosfield that we met at the Metabolic Revolution. The events that I have had, the one we did in November and the one that we did in March, she came from DC to both of my events. And when I say was a rock star with helping just all the way around, I named all those other people who were there, but she was the backbone of helping us with these events. So I just do not, because we had this Metabolic Revolution connection, I do not want to miss the opportunity to shout her out as my sister girl. I am so grateful for her and my connection. She took it from being on that platform together, her being a part of the organization of that October 13th date, to being a real live person who says, I'm with you. And she has shown up and showed out in two spaces. She's been here to Tennessee twice. And when I was in DC speaking, picked me up and hung out with me there as well. So shout out to her and the cohesiveness of the Metabolic Revolution, right? This whole movement of trying to make us better. So I just wanted to make sure I say that. Yes, Robin, I see your finger.
I just want to point out that we had Jackie on episode 21 of Less of Me Success Stories. So if anybody wants to know who Jackie is, please go back and listen to that episode.
Thank you for that, Robin. Yes. So the thing that I would want to say to people that are embarking on their keto biography is get your labs. Be data driven. Understand, right? If you do nothing else with your doctor, is what I always say, let your doctor run your labs. The labs don't lie. They're going to tell you where you are so that you will know where you need to be. A lot of times when we talk about, and I never say lose weight, I say releasing inflammation. I don't call this on our body fat, because in one instance, you tell me fat is good for me to eat when I'm doing my beef fat, which is my new discovery. But you also tell me my body is fat, like, but that's wrong. So I get, can be confusing. So I call this on our body inflammation. If you need to release inflammation, then know your labs. Don't be comfortable with the doctor saying to you, all your numbers are good, and you have no idea what those numbers are, right? Well, I had them do a whole panel of stuff. Do you know what that is? You need to know it and understand it, because there are some underlying things that could be happening. I worked with a client recently that in her CAC score, they discovered a mass on her breast. So now she's going down, trying to get that part figured out. So knowing your labs, fasting insulin, A1C, understanding this waist circumference, whether you get it on a lab or not, you're insulin resistant, right? For African-American people, this darkness in your neck and in your eyes. So that's what I want to leave people with. Like, there are signs before there's trouble. The Bible says it this way: warning before destruction. Let us heed to the warnings as ways to be preventive, be proactive. I mean, I'm literally aging in reverse. If you go to my website, you will see pictures of me 9 years ago that look like I may have been 65, where actually I was 45, and now 54, I look 25. So that's my response to your audience, is like, get your labs. You might not like the doctor, but let's find out these labs so that you have some base mark. As a teacher, I was a data-driven instructing teacher. Based on the data I had on my students, I knew how to instruct them. I bring that same philosophy to this space. Based on the data that we get from your labs, we can then design a plan for where you go, how much exercise you need, how much protein do you need, how much fat do you need. You don't need carbs regardless, but you may be able to have a little if you know what your labs are.
I want to point out also that, you can get a lot of these labs without your doctor. You can go to ownyourlabs.com, and I think it's a .com. I could be wrong on the dot, but you can get these labs on your own and start where, what Denitra just said, advocate for yourself. And then you can go on a website like the SMHP's website or the Nutrition Network's website and find someone who you resonate with that can be your coach and guide and help you through.
Yep. And I'm on both of those. I'm on the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioner. You'll find me there. And you'll find me also on the Nutrition Network. Those are two places that I believe that are at the forefront of getting us where we need to be. And that's why I am a part of them. And you can come to our website, Nutritional Knowledge. Soon we will have a place on there as well for a referral of doctors. Because Dr. Yvonne Moore, if you're listening and you're in Memphis, I send you her way if you're looking for an OBGYN.
Yes, there are so many great doctors out there. I was once a part of Dr. Linskis here because he's on the West Coast and in Arizona. He's in California and Arizona. And wow, what an eye opener it was to get my labs read by somebody who really wanted to look at them. It was amazing. Denitra, you are a joy, a force of nature. I loved every second of this. I really hope that you'll come back sometime and share where you've, made some even more outreach, which I don't know if you have time on your calendar, but it's amazing. I love it. And I wish you and your Hey Sister Girl YouTube show all the best. And I hope that people tune in. So on behalf of Robin Dobbins, Denitra Davis, and myself, we thank you so much for hearing our keto biography.